Welcome back, everybody. A lot to get to today. I think it is really time for the FBI to act and formally start investigating, if they have not already, Trumpian Congressman Madison Cawthorn's completely unhinged and outrageous rant about armed citizens taking over the U.S. government and using as an analogy how the Viet Cong acted during the Vietnam War against American troops. And just every layer of this is trash. This is a sitting congressman. He's part of this Trumpian trio, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and him, Madison Cawthorn. This is sort of like a new breed of elected official, completely devoid even of a pretense of caring about policy. They just run offices based on tweets, memes, political stunts, and interviews on right-wing media. They're overt in that they don't even pretend to be about policy. This political stunt should really have some consequences. Last week, Cawthorn, who, by the way, represents North Carolina, I wrongly said a couple weeks ago, he represents South Carolina. Madison Cawthorn, representing North Carolina in the House, was being interviewed by Newsmax host Chris Salcido. Now, Chris Salcido has had me on his radio show. You can find how that went. There's a clip on my YouTube channel. And Cawthorn specifically said about those who say that having small arms, meaning firearms, wouldn't be useful in overthrowing the government if the government were to become tyrannical. He says, no, it is possible. Look at how the Viet Cong handled the United States Marines and the United States Army during the Vietnam War. Take a look at this.
You didn't see that what I'm making allusion to, but he's asked, I think it was Senator Kennedy who asked him, define an assault weapon. And he sat there and said, I can't define an assault weapon. Yet they want to take something called an assault weapon, which you and I both know doesn't exist. They want to take it away from us. So doesn't that basically undermine? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I actually saw him try and walk that back and say, well, the definition of assault weapons is anything that shoots a semi-automatic round, something that you can pull the trigger multiple times without having to reload, and it shoots. That is basically every single modern sporting rifle in the United States of America. But let me tell you, the Second Amendment is not written for sporting. The Second Amendment is so that if the tyrannical government ever wants to rise up, we can stop them. And if anybody ever wants to say, oh, well, you know what, citizens with a few small arms fire would never be able to stop the federal government, I absolutely disagree. Ask the Viet Cong how they handled the Marines and the Army in Vietnam.
Now, I really am struggling with what is the most absurd and disgusting part of this. It's hard to figure out because there's so much going on. I mean, the whole clip is 60 seconds. He's only talking for part of it. And there's just so much nuttiness there. First of all, again, the idea of the Second Amendment's purpose being for the overthrow of a potentially tyrannical government as the most important thing the Second Amendment is meant for, that's just wrong and that's disgusting. That's number one. Secondly, he keeps raising the Viet Cong, which killed endless American members of the military during the Vietnam War. He raises that as the model of armed citizen uprising against our government. Vietnam veterans are not going to like that, first and foremost, but it's most importantly a historically really stupid analogy to make because, first of all, the reason the Viet Cong was as effective as it was at killing Americans was the Americans came from across the world and were fighting in Vietnam. There is simply no analogy to a hypothetical Cawthorn force of right-wingers with guns trying to fight the U.S. Army on U.S. soil. It's such an absurd comparison that it's hard to take seriously. But sadly, lots of the people who would be ignorant enough to vote for this guy probably hear it and say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then the other aspect of this that's absurd is that even when fighting the U.S. Army, which had traveled across the world, remember, during the Vietnam War, the Viet Cong wasn't able to win anything or control anything. They were able to wreak such havoc that they made the war really expensive and difficult for the United States to continue fighting. The Viet Cong wasn't even winning on their own soil. And it was their own soil, after all. And the U.S. military was halfway across the world. So it's such an ignorant and ignorant of history analogy and comparison, but too many right-wingers hear this and they think, Madison Cawthorn, he knows history. What an amazing young man. That's amazing. What a smart guy. The guy's a fool. And these comments are so borderline unhinged. It doesn't seem out of line to me that the FBI would look at whether people are being radicalized and getting involved in specific actions involving guns as a result of the nonsense that this guy is saying. It's really an indictment. Again, another one. I mean, these are exhausting. It's one after the other. It's another indictment on the intelligence and understanding of how the world works of such a huge portion of the American electorate. And as I've said before, if you overestimate the intelligence of the American electorate, you are almost certain to be disappointed. The biggest example of that, of course, is Donald Trump's 2016 run for president of the United States.
One of our sponsors today is Blue Chew, a unique online service delivering the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis in a chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. And they're giving my audience an entire month's supply for free. So if you think you could benefit from an extra boost of confidence when it's time, all you have to do is take a short quiz on their website. A licensed doctor approves your prescription. The medication comes straight to your home within days in a discreet package. No driving around to the doctor's office or the pharmacy. No waiting around. No awkward conversations with your doctor. All of Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA. The entire process is just a few clicks. Go to bluechew.com. The link is underneath this video. They'll give you an entire month's supply for free when you use the promo code Pakman. All you have to do is pay $5 shipping.